I stood alone at the edge of dawn, where the sky still wore the last deep indigos of night like a robe it was reluctant to shed. The world around me was suspended in that sacred hush before first light, when even the birds seem to hold their breath and time forgets to move. It was neither night nor day, but a threshold, a liminal space that felt more spirit than matter, more soul than sky. My breath floated in front of me in pale silver puffs, like ghosts rising from the warm chambers of my lungs, and I watched them dissolve into the stillness as though they were prayers rising without words. These mornings called to me, not for their beauty alone, but for their silence, for the questions that silence stirred, for the way the earth itself seemed to lean forward, waiting for something. I, too, waited. Inside my chest, my heart moved restlessly, not in pain, but in longing. A longing so old and so wide that it had no name. It was the same feeling I had known since boyhood, the ache that crept in when the world grew quiet, when I saw the shadows stretch across a courtyard at dusk, when I looked into the eyes of someone who smiled but carried sorrow in the curve of their mouth. A longing that came not from what was missing, but from something so close, so near, so intimately woven into my being that I could never quite reach it. It trembled at the edges of every joy I had ever known, as if whispering, "There is more. There is more." And so I stood there, gazing out across the eastern sky, feeling like a thread stretched taut between the heavens and the earth, humming with a vibration that wasn't mine alone. The first light came like a breath inhaled after long stillness. It wasn't sudden. It began subtly, the way music begins with the space before the first note. A pale golden hue crept beneath the dark blue of night, brushing the edges of the horizon with soft amber, like the fingers of a lover brushing sleep from the eyes. I watched the sky change its face slowly, as though it too were waking from a dream. That transformation, the quiet, certain unveiling of light, moved me. Not because it was beautiful, but because it mirrored something I had felt all my life but never named. There was a presence in it, a silent language older than the world. And in that presence, I felt held. I felt seen. I felt loved. My eyes closed without effort. Not in retreat, but in surrender. And as they did, something opened wider inside me. There was a rhythm there, a pulse, not of blood, but of something more ancient. It beat not just within me, but around me, through me, beyond me. It was in the breeze that stirred the tips of the olive trees. It was in the distant rustling of leaves that sounded like old paper being turned by invisible hands. It was in the soil beneath my feet, in the stars that still lingered, in the breath of the unseen. And I realized then, this rhythm was love. Not the love we speak of in poetry and sweet letters, though those, too, are reflections of it, but a deeper, wilder, truer love. A love that had no opposite. A love that did not desire or take or cling or burn. A love that simply was. It came to me not as a thought, but as a knowing. Love is the bridge between you and everything. I understood suddenly that it had always been there, from the moment I opened my eyes to this world. When I reached for my mother's hand as a child, when I wept at the death of a sparrow, when I smiled at a stranger without knowing why, that was love. It was the hidden thread in every moment of joy and every pang of grief, the golden string tying me to every tree, every stone, every breath of wind. Love was not an emotion to be felt, but the field in which all emotions rose and fell. It was not an act to be performed, but the truth beneath every act. And I saw then how I had walked my whole life over that bridge without recognizing it. How every path I took, every person I touched, every word I spoke was a step across it. Even in my loneliest hours, when I thought I was lost in the wilderness of the world, I was never truly separate. I was always tethered, always being drawn forward, not by will but by love's invisible gravity. It had carried me like the current of a river, through pain and delight, through seeking and surrendering, until it brought me here, to this moment, this dawn, this breath, where I stood not on the edge of morning, but on the bridge itself. The tears that rose were not of sorrow. They were the soul's way of bowing. My knees might have remained strong beneath me, but inside, something knelt. Something ancient within me laid down its defenses, unfastened its armor, and simply opened. I did not need answers. I did not need to know what came next. I only needed to be here, awake to this presence. I felt myself dissolve, not disappear, but expand, into the vastness around me. I was not the observer. I was not even the witnessed. I was the witnessing. And in that sacred act, I knew without doubt, love was not a destination. It was the bridge, the journey, the companion, and the home. I opened my eyes. The sky now glowed with promise, and the earth stirred beneath my feet. The world had begun to awaken. But within me, something had already awakened, long before the sun dared rise. In the quiet stillness of a late autumn evening, when the air had grown crisp and the world seemed to slow beneath a blanket of twilight, I found myself sitting beside a small fire in the courtyard of my humble dwelling. The flickering flames danced with a life of their own, casting shadows that stretched and curved like ancient stories whispered by the night. The scent of burning wood mingled with the faint aroma of herbs drying on the walls, and a gentle hush settled over the earth as if the world itself were listening, waiting. It was in this sacred silence that I felt compelled to reflect deeply on all the lessons, all the journeys, all the moments of grace and pain that had led me here, to this understanding that love is the bridge between me and everything, and that crossing it is both an act of surrender and of courage. I thought back to the many faces I had encountered on my path, the laughter of children playing beneath the trees, the tear-streaked cheeks of those grieving alone, the hopeful gaze of lovers meeting in secret, the weathered hands of the laborers who build and tend in care. Each one carried within them a story, a universe of experience woven with threads of love, longing, fear, and hope. I realized then that every soul is a bridge unto itself, spanning the gap between isolation and connection, reaching out across the vast chasms that separate us. And in that realization, I felt a profound humility, how delicate and precious this web of love truly is, how easily it can be frayed and broken, yet how resilient it remains when tended with patience and grace. As the fire's glow softened and the first stars began to pierce the velvety darkness above, I found my thoughts turning inward, toward the places within myself where fear and doubt often lingered. There were times when I had doubted the power of love, when the weight of loss and betrayal seemed too heavy to bear, when the vastness of the world felt like an uncrossable gulf. Yet even in those darkest moments, a quiet voice within urged me to remember that love is not a possession or a prize, but a living bridge, forged anew with each choice to open the heart, to forgive, to reach beyond the self. It is the light that shines in the cracks, the breath that fills the spaces between pain and healing, the thread that weaves together all broken things into a whole greater than their parts. I recalled the many times I had witnessed love's quiet miracles, the hand held in comfort during a time of sorrow, the smile shared between strangers, the act of kindness that ripples outward like stones cast upon a still pond. These moments, seemingly small and insignificant, are in truth the very pillars of the bridge, the steady stones upon which the journey is made possible. They remind us that love's strength lies not in grand declarations or sweeping gestures alone, but in the everyday acts of presence, attention, and care that build connection over time. There were also moments when love challenged me, when it demanded that I confront the shadows within myself, the anger, the jealousy, the fears that threatened to close my heart and sever the bridge. In those times, love was not a gentle embrace but a fierce fire, burning away the illusions and defenses that kept me apart from others and from my own true self. It was a call to courage, to honesty, to vulnerability, to risk the pain of being seen and still remain open. These trials of love taught me that the bridge is not always smooth or easy to cross. Sometimes it is narrow and trembling, stretched over turbulent waters. But it is always there, inviting us to step forward, to trust, to believe in the possibility of union even when the path is uncertain. In this space between past and present, between memory and hope, I understood that love is both the journey and the destination. It is the path we walk with open eyes and open hearts, knowing that each step brings us closer to the truth of our shared humanity. To cross the bridge of love is to embrace vulnerability and strength, sorrow and joy, separation and union. It is to see the divine reflected in every face, to hear the sacred song beneath every word, to recognize that beneath all our differences flows the same unending river of love. The night deepened, and the fire burned low, its last embers glowing softly like the quiet heartbeat of the earth. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of life pulsing through me, the steady beat of my own heart echoing the vastness of the cosmos. In that sacred communion, I knew without doubt that love is the bridge that connects me to everything, to the earth beneath my feet, to the sky above, to the countless souls who have walked this path before me and those who will come after. It is the endless thread that binds us all in a tapestry of light and shadow, joy and sorrow, unity and mystery. And so, with a heart both full and open, I rise from the fire's warmth and step into the night, carrying the light of love's bridge within me. I walk forward, knowing that every encounter, every breath, every moment is an invitation to cross once more into connection, into presence, into the boundless embrace of love. This bridge is endless, unbreakable, and ever-inviting, stretching beyond horizons, spanning the depths of time, leading me home again and again to the sacred truth that love is all, and all is love. As I walk beneath the canopy of stars, the cool night air brushing gently against my skin, I am reminded that the journey of love is never truly complete. Each day offers a new crossing, a fresh opportunity to reach out, to mend, to deepen the connections that sustain us. There will be times of joy and times of trial, moments of clarity and moments of doubt, but the bridge remains steady beneath our feet, waiting, patient, eternal. It calls to us in the quiet moments, urging us to listen, to step forward with trust, to carry the flame of love's light into the darkest corners of our lives and the world. In this endless crossing, I find the meaning of my existence, the profound truth that to love and be loved is to touch the divine, to become part of something greater than ourselves. And so, I continue to walk, heart open wide, crossing the bridge again and again, knowing that it is through love alone that we find our way home. One evening, as the full moon rose like a pale flame in the ocean of sky, I slipped quietly away from the warmth and murmur of the gathering, where voices tangled softly in poetry and conversation. My friends did not stop me. They knew my silences as well as they knew my words. There are moments the soul grows too wide for the room it sits in, and I felt that yearning rise within me like a tide, silent, unexplainable, irresistible. The olive groves just beyond the city called to me in that moment, not with words, but with stillness, with a kind of luminous pull that I could feel in my chest. The world had fallen into that sacred hour between sunset and night, when colors fade and the air becomes scented with memory. I walked slowly through the dusty path, my robe brushing against the low grass, my hands at rest beside me, listening not with my ears but with something deeper, something in the marrow of my being. The sky was darkening by degrees, yet held onto a thread of violet where the sun had once been. Above me, the stars began to appear, one by one, like old friends stepping into the room of my solitude. The trees stood tall and quiet, their silver-green leaves catching the moonlight and stirring gently in the hush of the evening wind. There was a stillness here that I could never find in the city, no walls, no eyes watching, no names. Only breath, branches, and the earth holding me like a long-lost child. The longer I walked, the more I felt the layers of my identity slip away, the thinker, the teacher, the man of verse and discourse. What remained beneath those names was something older than language. A listener. A presence. A pulse. I found an old olive tree, its trunk gnarled and thick with age, roots coiled like sleeping serpents in the soil. I sat beneath it, pressing my spine against its bark, grounding myself against its ancient steadiness. The night air wrapped around me like a shawl, and I closed my eyes, surrendering completely to the sounds and silences that held me. No scripture, no prayer, no deliberate thought crossed my mind. Only awareness, pure and wide. The wind brushed my face as tenderly as a mother's hand. Somewhere nearby, a night bird cried out, then fell silent again. My breath slowed. My heartbeat softened. And in that quiet, I began to hear it again, not with ears, but with the very bones of my being, that rhythm I had come to know, that hidden music that plays beneath the noise of the world. It was faint, but unrelenting, steady as the turning of stars, and I knew I was once more in the presence of love. Not love as possession or passion, not love that seeks to hold or claim, but the kind of love that sustains existence itself. Love that moves the wind through the trees and draws roots deeper into soil. Love that lifts rivers from the mountains and returns them to the sea. Love that never speaks, yet is always speaking. It did not greet me as something new, it welcomed me like a memory. I had felt it as a child when I first gazed at the sky and knew I belonged to something immeasurable. I had felt it when I wept for a dying bird and touched its small body with reverence. I had felt it when Shams looked at me and saw through me, not with judgment, but with joy. And I felt it now, cradling me not from above, but from within. This love had no form, yet it gave form to everything. It was not distant or ethereal. It was right here, beneath my skin, between the leaves, within the breath of every creature that called this earth home. I began to see clearly, love was not a destination, not a prize at the end of spiritual striving. It was the path itself. It was the invisible stream beneath every step I had ever taken, the bridge I had walked even when I thought I was lost. It did not wait for me at some distant point of enlightenment. It moved with me in each moment, even in doubt, even in despair. Every joy, every sorrow, every mundane moment of daily life had been cradled in its arms, and I had not known. Now I did. As I opened my eyes, the moonlight had grown stronger, flooding the grove in a gentle, liquid silver. Shadows danced delicately beneath the trees, weaving in patterns older than scripture. I looked at the branches above me, how they reached out in all directions, embracing the sky with perfect trust. That, I thought, is how one should live, not grasping, not resisting, but surrendering to the unseen rhythm that gives life to all things. I was no longer sitting beneath the tree, I was the tree. I was its breath, its stillness, its reaching. I was the bird sleeping in its branches, the worm curled in its roots, the silence holding them both. In that moment, I did not observe unity. I became it. And it was then that the realization struck me not as thought, but as revelation. Love is the bridge. Not merely a passage from one heart to another, but the link between all that is. Between the visible and the invisible. Between soul and soul. Between the flower and the sunlight. Between the grieving and the comfort they seek. Between the poet and the page, the lover and the divine. It is what draws the seed upward through the soil toward the sun. It is what calls the wave back to the ocean. It is what leads the wandering soul back home, not with force, but with longing. When I finally stood, the grove no longer felt like a place outside of me. It felt like a reflection of what lived within me, and had always lived within me. I walked slowly back toward the city, my path lit by the silver glow of the moon, the leaves above rustling like a lullaby. I did not feel enlightened, or transformed, or holy. I felt simply whole. Whole in a way I had forgotten was possible. And I knew then, with the deepest knowing the heart can hold, that to walk this life with awareness is to walk always on that bridge of love. It never ends. It only widens. And every step we take in presence, in gentleness, in truth, is a step deeper into its embrace. When I returned from the olive groves, the moon now high in its throne above the rooftops, the house of my companions glowed like a vessel of light in the darkness. Its walls, washed in moon silver and flickering lantern glow, did not feel like mere stone and timber, but like the outer shell of something alive. I paused at the edge of the gathering and observed quietly, almost from outside myself, as if the man standing there was both me and not me. The air was thick with the warmth of conversation, with traces of oud and rosewater, with the rustling of robes as people moved gently around one another, engaged in small exchanges of food, of laughter, of silence. The world of men was soft tonight. It did not ache with the noise of ambition or division. It pulsed with something quieter, something sacred and nameless. And yet, I recognized it immediately. It was love, the same vast love I had tasted beneath the trees, now wearing human faces. I stepped in slowly, my presence unnoticed at first, and I was grateful for that. To observe without being the center, to receive the beauty of people simply being themselves, this is a kind of prayer. My eyes wandered across the space, a young man with sun-darkened skin pouring tea with both grace and care, his hands steady as though performing a rite, a mother rocking her child, her lullaby barely audible but infused with the same vibration I had heard in the rustling of leaves, two old friends sitting in silence on a bench, saying nothing, yet saying everything with the leaning of their shoulders and the occasional glance. Each of them lived in a rhythm, unaware, yet fully inside it. Each of them stood unknowingly on the same invisible bridge I had just felt stretched through the olive grove, through the stars, through the root of my breath. As I walked deeper into the room, the way people moved aside, the way eyes lifted toward mine, it was not reverence I saw, not really, but recognition. As if in that moment, I mirrored something within them they'd forgotten but suddenly remembered. And what they saw in me was not the man Rumi, but the presence of something they too had touched in moments they had not been able to name. I saw it then. I was not the teacher. I was not the wise one, the poet, the mystic. I was merely a window through which their own souls looked back at them. They had always known love, just as I had always known it. But tonight, perhaps, it had become more visible. I came upon a woman seated alone, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed not on any one thing, but on something far beyond the room. She was surrounded by others, yet completely apart, not in distance, but in inwardness. I knelt beside her, and though she did not look at me, she felt my presence. Her breath caught slightly. I could feel that she carried a grief too large for words, and yet it had made a nest inside her so long ago that it had grown quiet. She did not speak, and I did not ask. I simply placed my hand over hers. The warmth of skin against skin. No sermon. No comfort. Just that one act. And in that touch, something passed between us, not healing, not solace, but recognition. Her sorrow had never been hers alone. It had always belonged to the great tapestry of longing in this world. And love, the great gatherer of all things broken and whole, saw her. Through me, perhaps, but not from me. I was only the bridge. As the night unfolded, I watched the ways we touched each other without realizing it. A hand on a shoulder, a shared piece of bread, a brief leaning of heads in laughter. These small moments, unnoticed by many, were the true architecture of love's bridge. Not the grand declarations, not the verses etched in stone, but the gestures born from the heart's natural instinct to reach. I saw it in how one man offered his shawl to another who shivered, in how a youth filled the water bowl for the cat who waited at the doorway. These acts were not thought about. They were given. And I thought, how many such bridges do we cross in our lives without ever seeing them for what they are? There came a point when someone invited me to speak. A few voices hushed in anticipation. I stood among them, but the words I had once carried with such certainty had now grown quiet. I no longer wanted to teach. I wanted to dissolve. To become the space between words. But I opened my mouth, and what came was not instruction, but wonder. I told them of the tree, of the wind, of the rhythm I felt in my spine when I sat upon the earth. I told them that love is not a thing we need to find, it is what we are already swimming in, what we are made from, what holds the stars in the sky and brings tears to the eyes of the most hardened heart. I said, do not ask where the beloved is. Ask where you have been. For the beloved is always here, and the bridge is already beneath your feet. A hush settled over the room, not out of solemnity, but stillness. The kind that comes when many hearts beat together in silence. And in that moment, I felt something extraordinary. I was not the speaker. I was the spoken. I was the breath moving through them all. I was the lamp, yes, but I was also the oil, the flame, and the hand that lit it. And so were they. All of them. Each soul, each heart, each set of eyes. There was no other. There was only one, looking out from many faces. That one was love. That one is love. Afterward, I did not return to my room. I remained outside, on the veranda, beneath the sky. The stars had turned their faces fully toward the earth, and I looked up at them as if greeting old friends. A warm breeze curled around my body, and I wrapped my cloak tighter, not against the cold, but as if embracing myself. The night did not end, not really. It deepened. And in that deepening, I understood something more, that every gathering is sacred when love is present. That every eye can be a mirror. That every moment holds the door to the divine. And as I sat there in the soft hush of the world, I realized I had crossed a bridge that had always been there, only now I had done it with open eyes. And with each breath, each moment of surrender, I was still crossing it, deeper and deeper into the vastness of love. The journey had no destination, for love is not a place we arrive at. Love is the road, the sky, the traveler, and the dust rising behind us as we walk. The sun had barely crested the minarets when I found myself wandering through the bustling market of Damascus, where every scent and sound seemed to swell under the warmth of the early light. The city was alive in a way that could overwhelm the senses. The mingling aromas of cumin, saffron, and cardamom wove their way through the labyrinth of narrow lanes, intertwining with the heady sweetness of fresh dates and the sharp tang of freshly ground coffee. The merchants' voices rose and fell like waves, each hawking their wares with a distinct rhythm, some calling loudly, others bargaining with whispered urgency. Donkeys brayed, children darted between legs with reckless joy, and the clatter of wooden carts added a beat to the market symphony. Amid this vibrant cacophony, I noticed her, a woman standing apart from the crowd, her figure wrapped in a worn shawl, her gaze cast downward as if she carried the weight of the world in her eyes. Drawn by something I could not name, I moved closer, careful not to disturb the scene unfolding before me. Her delicate fingers traced the rim of a water jar, trembling slightly as if the vessel held not only water but memories, sorrows, and hopes too fragile to speak aloud. The beauty of her presence was quiet yet profound, not in the way the eye might notice at first glance, but in the depth of suffering and grace that radiated from her being. She seemed utterly unaware of the life pulsing around her, the merchants, the children, the hum of the city, all fading into a distant background as though she were caught in a still pool amid a rushing river. That sorrow was a living thing, a sacred wound etched deeply into her heart, and it moved me more than any poetry ever could. I approached her slowly, feeling a tenderness rise within me that was at once familiar and new. When I reached her side, she lifted her eyes, wet with unshed tears and shining with a fierce, quiet pain, and asked me, in a voice that was barely above a whisper, why must my heart ache so fiercely, so endlessly? Her question hung between us, delicate as a breath, yet charged with the power of 1,000 unspoken truths. I touched a stray lock of hair from her face with the gentlest care, offering a presence without demand, a sanctuary without conditions. "Sit with me," I said softly, and together we moved to a low stone bench sheltered beneath the broad branches of a cedar tree, whose ancient boughs swayed gently in the morning breeze. She sank into the seat, the world's clamorous rhythm falling away to a soft murmur. As she spoke, her voice unfolded like a fragile flower, revealing the depths of her loss: a husband taken by illness, a child claimed by famine, and the relentless solitude that now stretched between her and the world. Each dawn, she confessed, feels like a cruel reminder that life continues when mine feels broken. Her eyes, heavy with grief, searched mine as if seeking a balm for a pain that no words could ease. Yet I saw in that sorrow not a void, but a vast and aching longing, a call from the depths of her being toward reunion with something lost but never truly gone. "Your heart aches," I told her, "because it remembers the sweetness of union. It is a compass, pointing you back toward the source of your longing, not away from it. Weeping is not a sign of absence, but a testament to presence." She closed her eyes, her breath catching as if tasting the bittersweet truth in my words. "Imagine," I continued, "the rose that blooms bravely in the cold grasp of winter's last breath. It aches against the frost, and through that very ache, finds the courage to open its petals to the sun. Your heart's ache is no different, It is the spark that will light your path across the vast bridge to love's eternal embrace. Do not fear it. Embrace it as a sacred guide. Her shoulders relaxed, the tightness in her brow easing as if the weight of her sorrow had been shared, momentarily lightened by understanding. We sat together in the quiet sanctuary beneath the cedar, the marketplace's heartbeat resuming around us like a distant drum. Each burst of laughter from a passing child, each shouted bargain, each whispered prayer became a thread weaving together the fabric of existence, a fabric stitched with both joy and sorrow. I offered her a date from my pouch, its flesh sweet and rich, and she tasted it slowly, the sweetness mingling with the lingering bitterness of tears. You see, I whispered, love moves through both joy and grief. It is the current beneath every wave, the breath beneath every sigh. To taste sorrow is to know love's depth more fully. When the moment came to part, I helped her to her feet, feeling the strength in her stance renewed, fragile yet undeniable. Go now, I said, and let your heartsake be your lantern, illuminating the path to where you belong. Every step taken with an open heart draws you closer to the boundless love that waits to welcome you. She nodded, gripping her water jar as if it were a sacred chalice, and stepped back into the swirling flow of the market, her movement steadier, her spirit lighter. As I watched her disappear among the throng, I knew that the ache in her heart would continue to guide her, an invisible bridge stretching between the sorrow of loss and the radiant embrace of love's endless presence. There are moments in life when the ordinary becomes extraordinary, when the veil between the seen and the unseen thins, and I found myself in such a moment one languid afternoon beneath the dappled shade of the great plane tree that stands beside the river. The water murmured softly nearby, weaving its ancient, ceaseless song through the air, mingling with the laughter of children playing at the banks and the distant calls of merchants from the marketplace. The world, in all its ceaseless movement and clamor, seemed to pause for a breath, and I felt the pulse of something deeper, something invisible yet palpably alive, weaving itself through the very fabric of existence. It was a presence that neither rushed nor demanded, but simply was, an ever-present current flowing quietly beneath the surface of all that I could see. I had come to this place seeking nothing more than a moment's respite from the endless turning of thoughts within my restless mind. The city's noise had grown heavy on my spirit, and I longed for the kind of silence that is not absence but fullness, a silence that opens the heart and softens the boundaries between self and other, between man and the world. As I settled onto the worn stone bench, the roughness of its surface grounding me firmly to the earth beneath, I closed my eyes and let the world slip away until all that remained was the steady rhythm of my breath and the gentle murmur of the river's ancient song. I felt the rough bark of the plane tree behind me, solid and enduring, and I leaned back against its strength, surrendering myself to the moment. In that stillness, love began to stir, not as a distant ideal or lofty concept, but as a living presence, as real as the cool breeze brushing my skin, as undeniable as the warmth of the sun filtering softly through the leaves above. It was love that held the river in its steady course, love that coaxed the trees to reach skyward, love that called the birds to song and the children to laughter. Most profoundly, it was love that bridged the space between me and all that surrounded me, between my beating heart and the vastness of the world. I felt this love not as something to be sought or grasped, but as the very breath of existence itself, eternal, unyielding, and infinitely tender. As I sat in that embrace of silence and presence, a fisherman appeared on the riverbank, his figure framed by the golden light of late afternoon. His hands, weathered and strong from years of labor, moved with practiced ease as he cast his net wide into the shimmering water. Each motion was fluid, graceful, a dance between man and river, a communion that required no words. I watched as the net sank beneath the surface and then rose again, heavy with the river's bounty, the silvery fish glinting like scattered stars. In his eyes, I saw a quiet reverence for the gift of each catch, a gratitude not spoken but deeply felt. He did not claim the river as his own, nor did he wrest it forcibly. Rather, he moved in harmony with its rhythms, a participant in a sacred dance of giving and receiving. In that simple act, the truth became clear: love is not possession, not conquest or ownership, but communion. It is not force, but gentle yielding, a bridge that invites us to meet the world with open hands rather than clenched fists. This love flows through all things, through the river and the net, through the fisherman and the fish, through the earth and sky, and binds us all in a great, unbreakable circle. I felt my own heart expand as if trying to match the rhythm of that ancient dance, eager to release the tensions I had held so tightly, eager to surrender into the current of life itself. The sky began to soften as the afternoon waned, shifting from the harsh gold of midday to tender hues of pink and lavender, like a whispered promise painted across the horizon. I opened my eyes and took in the people who moved nearby, the mother gently soothing her child with a whispered lullaby, her voice trembling with love, the old man who tended a small garden with patient care, each seed planted a prayer, the merchant who paused in his busy day to share a smile with a passerby, a moment of human warmth amidst the trade. Each of these souls, I realized, was connected by that same invisible thread of love, moving through their lives like a river beneath the surface, unseen but shaping and sustaining all that is. It was as if the whole world had become a living mosaic, each piece radiant and essential, held together by the golden mortar of love. It occurred to me then, with a clarity that took my breath away, that the bridges we seek, between ourselves and others, between earth and sky, between the mortal and the divine, are not distant structures to be built with labor and sweat. They already exist, woven into the very breath of existence itself, formed by love's infinite hand. Our task is not to construct these bridges but to step upon them with awareness and trust. To open our hearts enough to feel the current that flows beneath our feet and to allow it to carry us gently home. As twilight deepened and the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, distant and cold to the eye yet vibrant with the fire of unseen worlds, I felt a surge of gratitude swell within me, for the gift of this moment, for the chance to witness the sacred dance of life unfolding in the ordinary, to be part of the vast tapestry woven by love's unending thread. In that gratitude, I knew that every step I take, whether upon sunlit paths or through shadowed valleys, is a crossing of that bridge, an act of joining with all that is, an acceptance of the vast unity that underlies apparent separateness. Rising from the stone bench, I stretched my limbs and breathed deeply, feeling renewed, humbled, and deeply connected. The river song followed me as I walked away, a gentle reminder that love is not something to be grasped or held tightly, but the very essence of our journey. It is the bridge between me and everything, the light beneath my feet, the wind at my back, the pulse of the world within my chest. And as long as I walk with open heart and open eyes, I will never be alone. This path, this bridge of love, stretches endlessly before me, inviting me forward with the promise of union, the promise of home. The first time I truly understood the infinite reach of love was not in the quiet solitude of a grove or the gentle flow of a river, but in the midst of a crowd, beneath the blazing sun at the heart of the city's marketplace. The air was thick with dust and fragrance, pomegranate and jasmine mingling with the sharp tang of leather and the spicy heat of roasted nuts. Voices rose all around me, bargaining and bantering, a rich chorus of human life weaving itself into the very stones beneath our feet. I stood still amidst the motion, feeling the energy pulse like a living thing, a vast, tangled web of desire and hope, fear and joy. And in that turbulence, I found myself searching, not for escape, but for connection, for a thread that could bind the scattered pieces of the world into one seamless whole. As I moved through the throng, I noticed a child sitting alone on the steps of a fountain, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and loneliness. Her small hands clutched a simple wooden doll, worn smooth from many days of play and carried with her like a talisman against the world's uncertainties. She was surrounded by the clamor of the crowd, yet utterly alone in her quiet stillness. Something stirred within me, a recognition, a tenderness that seemed to arise from the very marrow of my being. I approached her slowly, kneeling down so that my eyes might meet hers without overpowering her fragile space. She looked up at me, and in that gaze I saw not just the child, but the reflection of every soul longing to be seen, to be held, to be known. Without a word, I reached out and took the doll from her hands, turning it gently so that its face caught the sunlight. "This doll," I whispered, "is like love itself, worn by time, shaped by hands, yet still whole and full of life." The child's lips parted in a small smile, and for a moment the noise of the market seemed to fade into a quiet harmony that only hearts attuned to love can hear. I spoke then of the bridges that love builds, not only between people, but between all things. Between the stone and the sky, between the seed and the soil, between the breath we take and the breath that the earth exhales. Love, I told her, is the unseen path beneath our feet, the current in the river, the thread that weaves the tapestry of existence. It is the force that draws the solitary soul toward communion, that bridges the chasms carved by fear and misunderstanding. In that moment, the child listened as if the words were water falling gently into a dry well, filling it slowly until it brimmed over. Around us, the market continued its symphony, voices rising and falling, feet shuffling, a distant call to prayer ringing clear and steady. And yet between the child and me, a stillness had settled, a sacred space created not by distance, but by closeness. I handed her the doll back, and she took it carefully, as if receiving a precious gift anew. Her eyes shone with a light that spoke of hope rekindled, a fragile but fierce knowing that she was not alone in the world. Walking away from that fountain, the heat of the sun softened by the shade of nearby trees, I carried with me the weight and the wonder of what I had witnessed. Love is not always the grand gesture, the sweeping poem, or the divine ecstasy. Sometimes, it is the quiet reaching out, a hand offered in kindness, a moment of shared silence, the recognition that another's heart beats as surely and as deeply as our own. Love is the bridge we cross again and again, not always aware of its presence, but always carried by its strength. That day, I understood anew that the world is held together not by stone or steel, but by this fragile, invisible web of love that binds every living thing. Each encounter, no matter how small, becomes a thread in the great tapestry, a step upon the bridge that leads us from isolation into unity. To live in love is to live awake, to see beyond the surface and recognize the sacred in every face, every gesture, every breath. It is to know that we are never truly apart, but always connected, carried forward by the boundless current of love that flows through all things, bridging the spaces between us and drawing us home. I remember how, as I stood there beside the child, the warmth of the sun seemed to envelop us both, wrapping the moment in a golden light that softened the harsh edges of the bustling market. I felt, deeply, the paradox of love's quiet power amidst the noise and chaos of life, how it can make us vulnerable and yet unbreakable, how it invites us to open ourselves fully, even when the world feels unforgiving. The child's gaze held a question without words. How do we find that bridge when the world feels so fractured? How do we trust love when our hearts are so easily bruised? I answered her without speaking, by simply holding her eyes, by being present in a way that needed no language. Love's bridge is not built by reason or logic, but by the openness of the heart, the courage to show up despite fear, the willingness to connect beyond the illusions that separate us. It is the breath we share with one another, the unspoken understanding that beneath our differences, we are bound by the same longing, to be seen, to be loved, to belong. As I left the market that day, the doll tucked safely in the child's hands, I felt a profound shift within myself. Love's bridge is not a distant goal, but the path we walk every moment, in every breath, in every encounter. To recognize it is to step beyond loneliness and fear, to embrace the messy, beautiful reality of connection. It is to remember that we are threads in a vast and intricate tapestry, each one vital, each one shimmering with the light of the beloved. And so, I walk forward still, carrying that memory as a sacred talisman, a reminder that love is never lost, never out of reach. It is the bridge beneath our feet, the river beneath our steps, the endless song that calls us home. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the distant mountains and painted the sky with hues of molten gold and soft rose, I found myself drawn to the outskirts of the village where wildflowers bloomed in untamed abundance. The air was thick with their sweet scent, a fragrant reminder of the earth's quiet resilience and enduring beauty. I wandered slowly through the meadow, my bare feet brushing against the delicate petals and cool, dew-kissed grass, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath me, steady, ancient, and strong. In that moment, the world seemed vast and infinite, yet intimately near, as if the boundaries between self and soil, sky, and soul had dissolved into a single breath, a single beating heart connected to all things. Amid the riotous colors and soft whispers of the wildflowers, I noticed an old woman seated beneath the twisted, gnarled branches of an ancient olive tree. Her face was carved by time and sun, every line and wrinkle telling stories of seasons past, of joys cherished and losses endured. Her eyes, deep and fathomless, held a quiet light, wisdom mingled with sorrow, hope braided with resignation. She was humming a low, haunting melody, one I recognized as an ancient lullaby passed down through generations, a song that carried both mourning and hope in its tender cadence. Her hands rested gently in her lap, fingers tracing the intricate lines of an embroidered cloth she held. Each stitch was a story, a memory woven into the very fabric of her life, fragile yet unbroken. There was a quiet dignity in her presence, a grace born not of ease, but of endurance and surrender. I approached slowly, mindful not to disturb the sacred stillness that seemed to surround her. When she lifted her eyes and met mine, I saw reflected there the weight of countless lifetimes, of love given and lost, of grief weathered and joy savored, braided inseparably together in the quiet strength of her gaze. Without a word, she gestured toward the embroidered cloth, inviting me to sit beside her on the soft earth, its surface cool and comforting beneath me. As I settled at her side, the melody faded into silence, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves in the evening breeze and the distant call of a nightingale. The world held its breath, and in that pause, I felt the vastness of love stretching before me like an endless bridge, timeless, unbroken, and strong, spanning all that is seen and unseen. We sat together in silence for some time, two souls sharing space and stillness, connected by a presence beyond words or thought. Then, with a voice both fragile and fierce, the old woman began to speak of her life, the love she had cherished and lost, the children she had born and buried, the wars and famines that had shaped her years. Each story was a thread woven into the tapestry of her existence, marked by pain and beauty in equal measure. Her words carried the weight of suffering but also the lightness of acceptance, as though she had come to understand that love does not shield us from loss, but rather teaches us how to carry it with grace and tenderness. I listened with my whole being, my heart open and aching in the resonance of her journey. Her life was a testament to the truth that love is not a possession to be clung to, but a river to be entered again and again, sometimes calm and clear, sometimes turbulent and wild, but always flowing forward, shaping and sustaining all who drink from its waters. She spoke of how love had been both her refuge and her trial, a force that had broken her open only to fill the spaces within her with deeper compassion, understanding, and humility. In her voice I heard the echo of every soul who has ever dared to love deeply and risk the pain that comes with such courage. In her presence, I came to realize that love's bridge is not only between hearts in harmony but also between wounds aching to be healed. It spans the chasms carved by grief and fear, reaching across the divides that separate us from ourselves and one another. It is the thread that binds the living and the dead, the past and the present, the seen and the unseen. To cross this bridge is to embrace the fullness of life, its joy and sorrow, its light and shadow, in a single, unbroken embrace that holds even the darkest moments with tenderness. As twilight deepened and the first stars began to shimmer faintly overhead, like tiny lanterns in the vast velvet sky, I felt a profound gratitude settle within me for the lesson she had shared so simply and without hurry. Love is not a place we arrive at, a destination marked on a distant horizon, but a journey we undertake continually, sometimes with open arms and a joyous heart, sometimes with trembling hands and a weary soul. It is the bridge that carries us home, over and over again, across the vast expanse of being. And in that knowing, I found a quiet peace settling into the hidden corners of my heart, a peace born not of escape or forgetting, but of embrace and understanding. When I finally rose to leave, the old woman pressed the embroidered cloth into my hands, a precious gift, a sacred talisman woven with the threads of memory and love. As I walked back through the meadow, the wildflowers swaying gently in the evening breeze, I carried with me the weight and the grace of her stories, the echoes of her song and the soft strength of her presence. Love, I understood more deeply than ever before, is the bridge between us and everything, connecting past and present, joy and sorrow, self and other, binding all into the luminous fabric of life itself. It is the ever-present current that flows beneath every step we take, the unbreakable thread that weaves together the scattered fragments of our existence into a whole, radiant tapestry. And as night fell fully, blanketing the earth in its quiet darkness, I felt the bridge of love stretch out endlessly before me, strong and sure, guiding my steps into the mystery and wonder of what lies beyond the horizon. There came a time when the lessons of love moved beyond words and stories into the very marrow of my being, when love revealed itself not just as a bridge between souls, but as the very ground upon which all life stands. It was during a long journey through a rugged mountain pass, where the air was thin and sharp, and the earth beneath my feet was cracked and worn by centuries of wind and weather. The path was narrow, twisting precariously along steep cliffs, with sheer drops that plunged into misty valleys far below. Each step required care, each breath a mindful offering to the moment. In this raw and elemental landscape, the grandeur of creation pressed in on me, vast and uncompromising, yet also intimate and tender in its detail. I walked alone, the silence broken only by the crunch of my sandals against stone and the occasional cry of an eagle soaring overhead. The sky stretched wide and endless above me, a canvas of shifting blues and whites, and as the sun arced slowly toward its descent, the mountains began to glow with a warm amber light that softened their rugged edges. It was here, in the quiet vastness of the high places, that I felt love in its most primal form, not as sentiment or longing, but as the very essence of being itself. Love was not something distant or separate, but the unyielding force that held the mountain and the sky, the stone and the air, the breath and the soul in a single, unbroken embrace. I paused on a narrow ledge, my heart pounding with both awe and humility, and looked out over the landscape that stretched endlessly before me. There, etched into the rugged earth, I saw the traces of countless lives, ancient paths carved by travelers long gone, the delicate bloom of wildflowers stubbornly clinging to cracks in the rock, the slow dance of clouds drifting lazily across the peaks. In all of this, I recognized the bridge of love once more, this time not between two separate beings, but between all things, woven into the very fabric of the world. It was the force that connected the smallest grain of sand to the highest star, the beating heart of creation itself. As I stood there, a sudden gust of wind swept through the pass, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth, the sharp tang of rain yet to fall. The air was alive with the whispered voices of the past, stories of pilgrims and wanderers, lovers and saints, each one carried upon the breath of the wind, carried by love across time and space. In that moment, I understood that love is not merely a feeling confined to the human heart, but a cosmic current flowing through every atom, every breath, every moment. It is the pulse that animates the universe, the invisible bridge that spans not only between people but between all existence. I remembered the faces of those I had loved and lost, their presence etched into the landscape of my soul like the ancient paths beneath my feet. Though they were gone from sight, I felt them near, woven into the tapestry of life, their spirits carried on the same winds, their love enduring beyond the bounds of flesh and time. And I saw that this love, this bridge, is not weakened by absence or death, but is made stronger by remembrance and presence. It is the eternal song that calls us back to ourselves and to each other. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the valley like silent prayers, and I felt a profound peace settle deep within me. Here, on the edge of the world, I was reminded that love is the very foundation of all things, the bedrock beneath the shifting sands, the unbroken thread that ties all souls together in a grand and sacred dance. To walk in love is to walk with reverence, to see with eyes wide open to the mystery and miracle of existence. It is to know that no matter how far we wander, no matter how steep or treacherous the path, we are always held, always connected, always carried by the unyielding strength of love's bridge. As darkness crept softly across the peaks, and the first stars began to glimmer like distant lanterns in the sky, I began my descent, each step guided by the quiet light of understanding. Love is not a destination to reach, nor a prize to win, but the very journey itself, the path beneath our feet, the wind at our backs, the heart that beats steadily within us all. And with each step, I felt myself crossing again and again the endless bridge of love that connects me to everything, past and present, earth and sky, self and other, woven into the luminous fabric of life, unbroken and eternal. The path wound downward, and as I descended, I noticed how every stone, every leaf, every whispered breeze seemed alive with the presence of love. It was in the way the roots of a lone cedar clung stubbornly to the rocky soil, defying gravity, in the soft murmur of a distant brook that sang a song of persistence and renewal, in the delicate webs spun by spiders, glistening like spun silver in the fading light. All these small miracles spoke to me of love's quiet tenacity, its gentle insistence that life endure, that connection remain unbroken. I thought of how often we overlook these subtle signs, how easily we forget that love is woven through every part of existence, not just in grand gestures or exalted moments, but in the very air we breathe and the ground beneath our feet. As night deepened, the mountains around me seemed to grow larger, more mysterious, and I felt both humbled and uplifted by their silent majesty. The stars above twinkled with a light that felt ancient and knowing, as if they too were keepers of the secret of love's bridge. I sat for a time on a rocky outcrop, gazing upward, letting the vastness of the cosmos settle around and within me. It was then that I realized love's true power. It is the force that transforms solitude into belonging, separation into unity, darkness into light. It is the eternal thread that runs through the heart of all things, binding us to one another and to the very essence of creation. In that sacred moment, I felt the presence of all who had walked this earth before me, their joys and sorrows, their hopes and fears, their endless quest for connection and meaning. And I understood that love's bridge is not something I build alone, but a shared path, constructed step by every soul willing to open their heart. It is the song we sing together, the dance we perform in unison, the light we carry into the unknown. Rising finally, I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the crisp mountain air, and began the last leg of my journey down the winding trail. With every footfall, I felt a deep and abiding certainty that love is the foundation of all things, the bridge that spans all distances, the sacred current that carries us through life's endless mysteries. It is the unbroken thread that connects me to you, to the earth, to the stars, binding us all into one radiant whole, forever crossing, forever joining, forever home. In the quiet stillness of a late autumn evening, when the air had grown crisp and the world seemed to slow beneath a blanket of twilight, I found myself sitting beside a small fire in the courtyard of my humble dwelling. The flickering flames danced with a life of their own, casting shadows that stretched and curved like ancient stories whispered by the night. The scent of burning wood mingled with the faint aroma of herbs drying on the walls, and a gentle hush settled over the earth as if the world itself were listening, waiting. It was in this sacred silence that I felt compelled to reflect deeply on all the lessons, all the journeys, all the moments of grace and pain that had led me here, to this understanding that love is the bridge between me and everything, and that crossing it is both an act of surrender and of courage. I thought back to the many faces I had encountered on my path, the laughter of children playing beneath the trees, the tear-streaked cheeks of those grieving alone, the hopeful gaze of lovers meeting in secret, the weathered hands of the laborers who build and tend and care. Each one carried within them a story, a universe of experience woven with threads of love, longing, fear, and hope. I realized then that every soul is a bridge unto itself, spanning the gap between isolation and connection, reaching out across the vast chasms that separate us. And in that realization, I felt a profound humility, how delicate and precious this web of love truly is, how easily it can be frayed and broken, yet how resilient it remains when tended with patience and grace. As the fire's glow softened and the first stars began to pierce the velvety darkness above, I found my thoughts turning inward, toward the places within myself where fear and doubt often lingered. There were times when I had doubted the power of love, when the weight of loss and betrayal seemed too heavy to bear, when the vastness of the world felt like an uncrossable gulf. Yet even in those darkest moments, a quiet voice within urged me to remember that love is not a possession or a prize, but a living bridge, forged anew with each choice to open the heart, to forgive, to reach beyond the self. It is the light that shines in the cracks, the breath that fills the spaces between pain and healing, the thread that weaves together all broken things into a whole greater than their parts. I recalled the many times I had witnessed love's quiet miracles, the hand held in comfort during a time of sorrow, the smile shared between strangers, the act of kindness that ripples outward like stones cast upon a still pond. These moments, seemingly small and insignificant, are in truth the very pillars of the bridge, the steady stones upon which the journey is made possible. They remind us that love's strength lies not in grand declarations or sweeping gestures alone, but in the everyday acts of presence, attention, and care that build connection over time. There were also moments when love challenged me, when it demanded that I confront the shadows within myself, the anger, the jealousy, the fears that threatened to close my heart and sever the bridge. In those times, love was not a gentle embrace but a fierce fire, burning away the illusions and defenses that kept me apart from others and from my own true self. It was a call to courage, to honesty, to vulnerability, to risk the pain of being seen and still remain open. These trials of love taught me that the bridge is not always smooth or easy to cross. Sometimes it is narrow and trembling, stretched over turbulent waters. But it is always there, inviting us to step forward, to trust, to believe in the possibility of union even when the path is uncertain. In this space between past and present, between memory and hope, I understood that love is both the journey and the destination. It is the path we walk with open eyes and open hearts, knowing that each step brings us closer to the truth of our shared humanity. To cross the bridge of love is to embrace vulnerability and strength, sorrow and joy, separation and union. It is to see the divine reflected in every face, to hear the sacred song beneath every word, to recognize that beneath all our differences flows the same unending river of love. The night deepened, and the fire burned low, its last embers glowing softly like the quiet heartbeat of the earth. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the rhythm of life pulsing through me, the steady beat of my own heart echoing the vastness of the cosmos. In that sacred communion, I knew without doubt that love is the bridge that connects me to everything, to the earth beneath my feet, to the sky above, to the countless souls who have walked this path before me and those who will come after. It is the endless thread that binds us all in a tapestry of light and shadow, joy and sorrow, unity and mystery. And so, with a heart both full and open, I rise from the fire's warmth and step into the night, carrying the light of love's bridge within me. I walk forward, knowing that every encounter, every breath, every moment is an invitation to cross once more into connection, into presence, into the boundless embrace of love. This bridge is endless, unbreakable, and ever-inviting, stretching beyond horizons, spanning the depths of time, leading me home again and again to the sacred truth that love is all, and all is love. As I walk beneath the canopy of stars, the cool night air brushing gently against my skin, I am reminded that the journey of love is never truly complete. Each day offers a new crossing, a fresh opportunity to reach out, to mend, to deepen the connections that sustain us. There will be times of joy and times of trial, moments of clarity and moments of doubt, but the bridge remains steady beneath our feet, waiting, patient, eternal. It calls to us in the quiet moments, urging us to listen, to step forward with trust, to carry the flame of love's light into the darkest corners of our lives and the world. In this endless crossing, I find the meaning of my existence, the profound truth that to love and be loved is to touch the divine, to become part of something greater than ourselves. And so, I continue to walk, heart open wide, crossing the bridge again and again, knowing that it is through love alone that we find our way home.